I should have brought my name to the basement.
Hey. Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you.
You recognize that stand?
I do recognize the stand.
All right, congratulations.
I want to say thank you to everybody today for coming out and being a part of this press conference. To have this crowd together here today is a real blessing to me. It's a beautiful day in the 4th District of Arkansas, and it's a beautiful day for me personally, because anytime you can come out and visit with people about the 4th District, about your campaign, which in my estimation is a job application. I'm applying for a job. It's a very lengthy interview process, but every point along the way that you have individuals join your effort that you feel like can make a difference because of their proven track record of being difference makers in the state of Arkansas, I think that is a special moment to be celebrated. So I appreciate you all being here today, being a part of this exciting announcement for me today, and I'm going to let Jim make the announcement himself, but let me just speak from the heart for a second about Jim Keet. I've known Jim for probably over 20 years at this point or longer, and he was always a stalwart of conservative principles. 2 and 3 decades ago, when it wasn't that trendy to be a stalwart of conservative principles. So when I think of courage, and when I think of respect, and I think of leadership, I think of Jim Keet. When I think of someone who stood up when too many others were sitting down.
Right.
When I think of someone who spoke out when too many others were remaining silent. When I think of someone who really got out there at any given time and took one for the team, you're looking at the man that did that. So to have an individual like Jim Keet step forward and give support to the Rankin campaign, to me it is a blessing, and it just fills my heart with joy to know that people are stepping forward to become a part of this effort. And with his proven leadership, especially in Republican circles, in Republican friendships that he's established throughout the entire state of Arkansas and throughout the 33 counties of the 4th District, I think that that is a really special thing to be celebrated today. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Mr. Jim Keet.
Well, kind of makes me want to run for something. Or away from something. I'm not sure which. It's an honor to be here today because I want to formally endorse BethAnneRankin to be the next Congresswoman from the 4th Congressional District.
All right.
I can remember back in 1988 is when I first met you, and I was only the 8th Republican since Reconstruction to be elected to the House, and then a couple of years later, only the 5th Republican to be elected to the Senate. And I can remember how lonely those days were, but I can still look back and remember the enthusiasm that Beth Ann always had, that she brought to the table, even back in those years, when she really didn't have a political bone in her body. She was just out there doing what she knew was right. I wish David could be here today, and Tony, because I'm so proud of what they have done of instilling the right kind of values in this young woman. And she is truly extraordinary. Don't y'all agree?
Woo! Amen.
Things have really changed since 1988. And today we're looking at, we hope, the first Congresswoman from the state of Arkansas.
Woo!
And the 4th Republican to be elected since Reconstruction to the United States Congress. And we're so proud of you.
Woo!
Beth Ann is one of those people who's always worked in the trenches. She isn't someone who just kind of sits back and then gripes about the way things are going and oh my, no, woe am I because we're not heading in the right direction. She's one of those women that got in there long ago and worked hard for other candidates. And I was one of those candidates, although she was working more for other candidates. She did help me from time to time, and I was always grateful for that because she was such a wonderful representative of our party and of our state. And back when she worked for Governor Huckabee, I can tell you I, at one time, worked as the state director for Tim Hutchinson. And so I interfaced with Beth Ann during that time back in 2002. And she did a magnificent job of working the trenches for him, not just in the electoral process, but more importantly, as a public servant for the state of Arkansas. She had some very important things that she did, including the policy advisor for the Southern Growth Panel Policies Board. She worked as a policy advisor on both state and federal issues. And when she went to Washington, D.C., she always commanded the respect of the people up there that she interfaced with because she understood the issues. She understood the impact on the state of Arkansas. And she knows Arkansas, and particularly the 4th District, like the back of her hand. She knows, as Governor Huckabee said the other day, she knows where all the little small towns are because she's been in every coffee shop, I think, in the 4th Congressional District. You know, I very rarely, in fact, this is only the second time that I've ever endorsed somebody in a primary. So why would I step forward at this time? I can tell you this, it isn't because I think that the other candidates are bad people. I think they're good candidates. And I think any of the three would be great representatives of the state of Arkansas. But here's why I stepped forward for Beth Ann. She has guts. Now that may not be a very feminine word to throw your way, Beth Ann, but I can remember those days when nobody else had the guts and the fortitude and the determination to step forward into the breach and run against Mike Ross when he had $3 million in the bank. He had the support of the Democratic National Committee and all of the other folks that were involved in that campaign. He had reached kind of a pinnacle of power in Washington, D.C., and she was the only person who had the guts to step forward into the breach. That's right.
Amen.
That's also her, by the way. She has determination. What do I mean by that? When she was representing Governor Huckabee, and there was an issue that required not only some good common sense, but also to be able to stand by her principles, she was always there for Governor Huckabee, always. She has passion for what she does. It doesn't make any difference whether it's pursuing a crown and becoming Miss Arkansas or working for the governor. She has always pursued it with such passion and commitment to whatever she's doing, and that's what she's doing right now. But even more importantly, perhaps, is her ability. I saw that up close and personal, and I can tell you this, when she goes to Washington, D.C., she will do an absolutely outstanding job, not just for our state, not just for the 4th Congressional District, but for our entire nation.
Right.
The last thing that I want to say about Beth Ann after knowing her for about 20 years is this. I got to know her really well back in 2010. I was another one of those people who kind of stepped forward. I was going to run for lieutenant governor and got so much pressure to go ahead and try to articulate the issues of our party that I went ahead and ran for governor, also against a very popular incumbent. And I got my butt beat just like she did. But you know what? That's okay, because that's what our country is all about. It's stepping forward, articulating those ideas that we believe will move our state forward, and that's exactly what Beth Ann did. But I'll never forget one night, we had both been on the campaign trail. This was at about 7 o'clock at night, and all of these polls were coming out about how everybody was doing, and what a great, all the polls were rising, and everybody was ahead in the polls. And Beth Ann reached over to me and said, "Jim, are we the only 2 Republicans in Arkansas that aren't the favorites?" So she also has a wonderful sense of humor. So when I think of Beth Ann for all these years, you know what I think of? I think of the Energizer Bunny. Now, the only difference is that if the Energizer Bunny tried to keep up with Beth Ann, that poor little bunny's tail would be hanging down so far that he'd be tripping over its tongue with its own feet. And one day I'd taken about 6 or 7 5-hour energies just to try to keep up with her, and it didn't work. I still couldn't keep up with her after all those 5-hour energies. But at any rate, I just want to be here today on a serious note and say that Beth Ann epitomizes something for me that Winston Churchill once said when he was talking to the Harrow School back in October of 1941. It was in the darkest hours for Britain and the free world. And he gave a speech that day that initially nobody ever understood, and there are all kinds of different accounts about the exact words, but essentially he said, he stood up to give his speech and he said, never, never, never give up. And he sat down. And all the students were kind of looking at each other, and the teachers and the parents and the press, and they were wondering what they should do. And then all of a sudden, they broke out in this thunderous applause because they realized that he was able to epitomize in just a very short phrase what being free is all about. Well, Beth Ann, you never, never, never gave up in that race. When the polls were looking bad, you were still out there 16 hours a day. That's why I'm here today. Because we need people in our government that have that kind of commitment, courage, and determination, and spirit. That's what she brings to the race. That's why she's going to win this race. That's why she's going to be the first Congresswoman from the 4th Congressional District and Arkansas's first woman congressman, BethAnneRankin.